Well, good morning, everybody. So we start off today with some infrared satellite imagery over the tropics. We're going to just kind of continue our discussion about Fiona and now called Tropical Depression 9. Let's start with Fiona. Yesterday is a Category 4 strength storm moved here, and we see it overnight last night moving just to the west of Bermuda. Is a very strong system. It has now hit the front that's moved through much of the country. This is the one that brought in the much colder air here, including the frost that happened in North Dakota. This is also part of a deeper trough that's bringing in the frost and freeze warnings this morning in parts of lower Michigan, the UP Michigan, and northern Wisconsin. And that whole trough system is going to grab Fiona, kind of pull it here into the Canadian Maritimes, where we do have the risk of having hurricane force winds later this weekend. It also has prompted the issuance of high wind warnings for parts of Maine. But what was going on while Fiona was moving north was that finally the system that we've been keeping such a close eye on down here has shown some organized convection. And this is what prompted last night the issuance of Tropical Depression number 9. Look how deep and cold these cloud tarps are right in this area. So this is now the system we're going to keep a very close eye on over the weekend to see how it tracks through the Caribbean and most likely goes over parts of Cuba. And that's going to be a critical part of this forecast. So first on Fiona, we do have hurricane warnings out for parts of Nova Scotia, Newfoundland, and then this is again going to spin here quite powerfully into this part of the Canadian Maritimes. But following that again is Tropical Depression 9. So National Hurricane Center today has suggested that by Monday, as this passes south of Jamaica and then heads toward Cuba, this could be up to hurricane strength at this point, moving over Cuba. Now the National Hurricane Center is following the European model yesterday, really taking this somewhere here on the Gulf side of Florida at this point. What's important about this new forecast update is that all week long we'd kind of seen the GFS taking Tropical Depression 9, which will be named Hermine, over the Yucatan and maybe into the Gulf, while the European had kind of favored this track. And the biggest update has been that the European has stayed really quite consistent with this forecast track, such that by 5 days from now it should be somewhere near Florida, and then midweek next week moving up the East Coast, possibly getting pulled in, like we talked about in yesterday's in-depth report, into another low that'll pull this right here into parts of the Canadian Maritimes once again, about a week away from when Fiona's going to do the same thing. But what I wanted to share with you is that this forecast update here is now being better mimicked by the GFS. So that's the new GFS forecast. So you can see much more consistency here. There's still quite a bit of ensemble spread, and I would say that we don't fully know the strength of this. But as I've been looking at this over the last few days, I've been kind of racking my brain, like, what system does this remind me of? Because it's kind of a unique track in that coming over Cuba, then going into Florida like this. And finally, I saw a couple of my friends on Twitter talking about it. It looks like Hurricane Charlie from 2004. So if you take a look at Hurricane Charlie's track, it's very similar overall. So we're not going to use this as an analog. That's sometimes a difficult thing to do with tropical cyclones, but at least we're seeing some similarities here. So we're going to have to watch out for that very carefully. Now, other than that system and this low that's sitting here today, moving over the Great Lakes and then into New England this weekend, that's the one that's going to pull Fiona up and around. Much of the rest of the country is drier. There's not a lot of, with a ridge coming over the west and a trough in the northeast, just a lot of upper level subsidence in this pattern. So we do have to deal with one system rolling through, but a lot of folks are going to continue to see wide open harvest windows moving through. Now, this particular low, which we'll take an in-depth look at in just a second here, is the one that prompted the heavy rains that were here in parts of California this week and the severe storms in Idaho. We're looking here at the last 7 days of total accumulated precipitation across the country. So we're going to expect to see more showers moving through this area, then into parts of the Great Lakes, and then into New England. But other than that, a lot of folks are going to stay relatively dry. So let's go right to the high-res NAM model and pick up here. Let's start this about 8 o'clock this morning. So there's our low, just sitting right here on the border between North Dakota and Montana. And we have the rains farther to the south. This is kind of the second shot at decent rain for Kansas. These have been critical rains for the winter wheat crop here. And as this pulls through, I wouldn't really call these harvest disrupting. In other words, they're not going to knock us out of fields in parts of the Midwest and upper Midwest for more than maybe a day. But this just rolls through, bringing some widely scattered showers through Saturday, getting into Sunday, and by midday Sunday, it's now pulled here, almost center right over London, Ontario, with its main circulation. I'm not right now anticipating any severe weather out of this. Maybe some stronger storms, but no severe weather. And it's just, again, following that track right over the eastern Great Lakes. And to be honest, that's where a lot of the action is going to be for much of the next 10 days. Take a look. Here's the European model. So watch the same system here, midday Friday, getting through the weekend. That's bringing in the showers. Now at this point, the ridge is reformed in the west, and we're just going to see that much of the western 2/3 of the country is going to be drier, including most of the southeast as well. What we'll be watching for is about next Tuesday afternoon and evening. That's when Hermine could possibly be approaching parts of Florida. And then at that point, things are quite speculative still, but I just want to show you the latest European model. While we have high pressure building in the midsection of the country, and we have a low that's going to try to sneak under the jet stream, which is staying way far to the north, hitting parts of the Pacific Northwest, I think a lot of eyes are going to be over here on Hermine moving along the East Coast. So is there possibility from Georgia to South Carolina, North Carolina, some heavy rain? There is. Also some stronger winds. And could this pull through the East Coast, delivering some heavy rain? It could, but we're pretty far out there in the forecast to really put down anything concrete about this. So what I want to do is I want to show you the week 1 versus the week 2 precipitation anomalies. And you do notice that for large sections of the country, it will be drier for most of this, but a lot of the action will be on where Hermine goes. Now, I'll just kind of make a point here. I know you see the heaviest rains are here, but I just want folks in this whole area to be on the lookout for where this possibly could go as we get into next week. And of course, we'll have more details about it then. This morning, we do have frost and freeze warnings that are out for parts of, starting here in Minnesota, going to Wisconsin, UP Michigan, and Lower Michigan, and also in parts of New York. But these are high wind warnings in place here in parts of Maine. If we watch what the temperatures are going to do, you're going to see a quick resurgence of warm weather by Saturday across the midsection of the United States as the cooler air tries to exit east. But there's that reinforcing shot at some cooler air behind the low that started in California early this week. And we see that cooler air coming into the Midwest and Great Lakes, eventually settling into that area by next Tuesday. At this point, the ridge opens up in the west. We see some warmth really rebounding here. And by next Wednesday and Thursday, it pushes into the central United States. Now, we have had a frost in North Dakota, came out of northern Montana into North Dakota, and today is sitting here in the upper Midwest and Great Lakes. But it looks as though after that, the pattern is going to favor more mild air as the deeper trough sits over the east through the end of September, beginning of October. And then more mild air comes out of the prairie of Canada and into the central plains. So if you kind of missed a frost event, we're going to buy some more time for us here for harvest, or letting the crop finish, into the first week of October. Okay, in today's report, we do talk about the new long-range updates, and I also include this in last night's in-depth video, which we do see quite a bit of much wetter weather coming in late in October here to the Pacific Northwest, a very early start to the wet season. But in that video and also in the report, we talk about more open harvest windows for much of the midsection of the country. Last thing to cover today is what's going on in South America. We do see above normal rains across a broad section here of South America, including where we're trying to get a crop planted, but it did trend a lot drier in parts of Paraguay, Uruguay, southern Brazil, along the Paraná River, which is here, and into Argentina, a place that's had some pretty cold weather and some drought issues. And it's going to continue to be cold there. You can see these two maps. One on the left shows you the next 5 days. One on the right shows you day 5 through 10. And we certainly see some cooler weather hanging around here. Temperatures anywhere between 4 to 8 degrees Celsius below normal. So, just a cool spring. But the rains are coming in, bringing up that soil moisture, which is what we need to watch. So I'm going to wrap it up there. Hope you all have a good weekend, and we'll talk to you soon. Thanks.